Watching my friends be kicked out of the shelter was one of the hardest things that I dealt with when I was in a safe house. I am a survivor. The safe house that I relocated to had a short stay. It wasn't an extended stay shelter, and there was a limited amount of beds and rooms. And it was a fairly nice shelter. Nothing like I imagined on TV. When I said shelter, you imagine a room just full of bunk beds and dirty conditions and almost like institutionalized type of environment. This shelter was more like a retreat type of place. Just the design and layout was absolutely beautiful, and I was surprised that it looked that way. It was nothing like I imagined. And we had rooms, and each room had its own bathroom. And so I would have a roommate, and me and my roommate would have our own bathroom that we would share. And then we had living quarters that we all shared, living room or whatever. And I have good memories, and I have not so good memories from the shelter. As I mentioned, the not so good memories, the really hard ones, were when my friends would be kicked out. And I know it was a short time that I knew these women, but I still consider them friends. And not acquaintances, not people I were in the shelter with. I consider them friends because the bond that we had, in that if I was to run into someone in the street, that we still have, is one that I can't even explain to you. It was almost like we was kindred spirits in a way. Each one of these women were beautiful in their own way, and I mean not just externally. I mean beautiful women. Some of the most kindest, strongest. There's one woman in a shelter who was so funny. Oh my gosh, you know, she needed to become a stand-up comedian, because here we were going through so much stuff and so much pain, and she would have us laughing so hard. I remember laughing so hard that my face would hurt, my cheeks would hurt, my stomach would hurt. I remember one time I almost peed on myself because I was laughing so hard. I was like, please, please, please stop, 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 stop. Those memories will always be with me. Hearing the kids running through the halls and laughing after coming from an environment when all I heard was yelling and anger, and having to tiptoe in my apartment with the lights off so he wouldn't even know I was in the apartment. See kids running through the halls just laughing and just hearing all like giggling, and that is something I will never forget. That happiness and joy. I love that. Or when the little kids would come and say, can I spend the night at such and such house? We say, this is not houses, this is rooms. Like, the kids they didn't care. They wanted to go spend the night at their friend's house or in a friend's room and have a sleepover. It's just the thing about kids. Their spirit is just so pure and happy. And I will never forget that. However, when I would come back from my work program and I would hear about who got kicked out earlier that day, or find out that somebody was getting kicked out that night, it could be because they broke one of the rules, or I mean it was just so many reasons, because honestly they had to keep the beds, I want to say empty, but they had to move people along so they could have more space for new people. And some people were being moved along a lot faster than the time frame that they were being allotted, and that was hard. And seeing women cry and break down. And I remember one woman, she had a baby and she was pregnant when she first got in, and she had her baby and they kicked her out 2 days later with a newborn. Another woman who was pregnant with twins, and she was high risk, and they told her, you have to find some place to go. You're about to be kicked out. We're giving you a week or whatever. Just, you need to find some place. And of course, you know, she didn't have anyone to help her, so she's on public transportation, on and off the bus, walking, going all these places, and put too much strain on herself and lost her 2 babies, lost her twins. And since she was so far along in a pregnancy, she actually had to birth her dead babies. And being on the phone, talking to her, and this was a woman that was so strong, never cried, nothing. Just hearing her bawling, crying on the phone, it broke me, you know? It was like these different experiences that I had with these women, that I would sit in their room all night talking and doing their hair, and we'd paint our nails and just talking and laughing. And sometimes we would cry and talk about our situations. And these women that I formed these lifelong, very strong connections, spiritual connections with, to see them in so much pain and knowing that I couldn't do anything to help them, that's something I will never forget. And I would love to be in a position where I can help people. And I always enjoy helping people. That's why I would advocate for my friends. And, you know, they would nickname me the lawyer because I knew the handbook inside out. And there was times when I would be able to advocate and get people to stay longer or to help them with their situations. And some of the workers didn't like that. They would call me college girl. Here come college girl, you know. But advocating for my friends felt good for me. I felt like I could help them, and I helped them as much as I could. And there's pros and cons to every situation. And I would never say to someone, you shouldn't leave and look into a shelter, or if that's what you need to do to get safe, because you might deal with some of the negative aspects of being in a shelter. Because when you weigh the pros and the cons, or the positives or the negatives, staying in an abusive relationship or being in a shelter where you are going to have support, even if it's limited support, accept the limited support and always have that plan. This is temporary and I need to get to someplace a little bit more stable. And I think what helped me to be able to survive that, to survive the shelter, to survive transitional housing, survive those type of things, is that I was always looking for what's next. How am I going to get from point A to point B? I didn't stay stuck. I was always looking and planning and making the phone calls and doing the legwork, no matter how hard it was, doing those things so I wouldn't be trapped. And whether you go into a shelter or you go and you stay with a relative, whatever your plan is, break your plan up into steps and go, okay, I'm giving me a month to get here. I'm giving me 2 weeks to get here. Okay, these are the phone calls I need to make. This is what I need to do. You have to keep moving ahead. You have to advocate for yourself. You have to be your biggest advocator. You have to be your biggest fighter. And sometimes fighting back is not fighting with your fists. And it doesn't even have to be with fighting with your words. Sometimes the fight is getting to you where you need to be, where you're self-sufficient and you're independent and you're away from toxic and negative people. Sometimes that's your biggest fight, is protecting yourself and working towards your plan and working towards getting safe and happy. That's how you can fight and advocate for yourself. And that's what I had to learn how to do for me. And it became like a muscle. Like the more I did it, the stronger I would get. And people say, wow, you're really strong. And I would say, I'm no different than you. The only difference is that I don't give up. I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to give up. I'm doing this for me, and I'm doing this for my baby. And that's my suggestion for you, is not give up. Become your biggest advocate, because you're worth it.